Recording. Okay. Happy Wednesday. It's like the most people that have been in class in, I don't know, like, it's like the second week or something. So it's lovely to see people and to see your faces and those things. So we're going to finish talking about body composition today, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about obesity and some of the poor health consequences that are associated with obesity. We'll start doing a little bit of that, and then that's going to revisit us as we move forward and we get into cardiovascular disease next week and diabetes and things the week after all of that, okay? So we will, assuming I can locate the equipment that we need, which is going to involve me sending a very terse email to our other faculty and graduate students about who took the biological impedance machines. We will have lab next Monday, okay? We will do it in person, and we will be able to make a couple of measures that I talk about today, and we can do that by yourself while we are socially distanced, okay? And we can wipe down the equipment in between uses. So we should be in a place where it can be no more of an issue than being in class regularly. For my folks that are coming via Zoom on a lot of days, if you don't feel comfortable coming to class, that is reasonably okay, but you will need to schedule a time to come and meet me, and we can have you do what you need to do for lab all by yourself. Okay, so I will post kind of what that lab is going to be. It's just going to be a modified version of what we kind of normally do. We're going to do a little bit of body comp stuff. Okay? All right. So, my, I don't even really know if it's bro science for today, but our starting place is going to be this. Because I was looking back at our bro science things before class, and I feel like almost all of you had asked about, somebody asked something weird, or almost all the time about like weight loss or something else. So I thought I would do this, okay? Everybody, and you're not gonna turn these in, but everybody just think about this, and then you can just yell some things at me. My folks on Zoom, y'all can do the same thing. Just yell at me. Okay. So let us assume, okay, that we have a 20-year-old person, okay? It could be you, it could be one of your friends, it could be some mythical person, right, that we would all like to be, okay? Some 20-year-old. Let's say that's a 20-year-old, and it's a 20-year-old guy, and he weighs, I don't know, we'll say 165 pounds, okay? By the time he is, and I apologize here, let me see what I can do. The blue doesn't also want to write. Why do none of our things work? That seems to really be fitting. There we go. He weighs 165 pounds right now. Let us assume then by the time he's 50, if he is a typical average American, that's key, average American, what do you think he is very likely going to weigh? Somebody just throw it out there. What do you think?
I think gain like 10 pounds a year, like average 10 pounds a year.
10 pounds a year. So he's going to be 465 pounds. It's okay there. So, I mean, that would be a lot, 10 a year, but okay. Maybe not quite that much. You want to try again?
So like 3 pounds a year?
Like 3 pounds a year.
Well, if he's going through college, it's probably 10 pounds a year. And then he gets old.
So if we did this one, he showed up as an 18-year-old and he weighed 145. Right? The freshman 10, which makes perfect sense, right? When you go from I've like been at home and all these things, and you can just go over to the couch and eat Chick-fil-A as much as you want at every possible meal because somebody paid for the meal plan. Is that just me? I just am the one that wants to do that. We will sometimes have lab meetings over there, and I'll go and I'll pay, and my grad students will like just repeatedly go back and grab Chick-fil-A sandwiches and throw them in their bag and take like 6 of them home with them for the weekend. So I'm not encouraging that, but it is a thing. Okay, so he weighs 165. By the time he's 50, just somebody give me a number. What do you think?
210.
210, okay? So that would be a gain of about 45 pounds, okay? 210.
Is he active?
If he is a typical average American, the data would suggest to us no, he's not going to be particularly active, right? As 70% of U.S. adults don't meet the physical activity guidelines. You all count as adults. You guys all meet the physical activity guidelines. So you can imagine what the average 50-year-old looks like. So, anybody else? What do you think? Jenna, what do you think? Give me a number.
I was going to say 200.
200, okay? Nick? 185. Okay. Wynn, what do you think? 240, okay. Okay. Emily, you want to guess?
I was going to say like around 200,
190, 200. Okay. So it seems to me that the vast majority of you think he's going to gain weight and not necessarily an insignificant amount of weight, right? It's not like, he went to like 170, he put on 5 pounds, right? Like whatever, it's not that big of a deal. He did this. We're talking a significant amount, like on the low end, maybe at least 20 pounds, okay? All right, this is the one where we sort of always kind of get in trouble. Now let's switch. Let's take a woman, okay? Let's say she's a typical college-age woman and she weighs 125 pounds. What do we think she might weigh at 50?
170.
What? Okay. 170. Hannah? 160. Sarah?
I would say 150.
150. Okay. Is there anybody else that hasn't gone? Taylor? 150. 150 also not precisely 152 pounds. So you mean 150 all? Okay. Okay. This doesn't paint a great picture for us, does it? Doesn't paint a great picture. I'm not saying this was me at 20, and I'm sure it may not be any of you, and this may not necessarily be any of you right now, thereabouts, or those kinds of things. But if this is where you guys think we're going, and you're not that wrong, how do we get there? Anybody know? I think it's actually in the notes. How much weight does a typical sort of American gain in the sort of 20 to 30 years after the age of 25? Do you guys know? Between 25 and 50, how much weight are you probably going to put on if you're an average person? $240, 50 pounds, maybe a tad bit of an overestimate, okay? But the average American gains right at about 1 pound a year, okay? From the age of 25 to 45, you gain about 1 pound a year, okay? So I tell all of you, imagine what you weigh right now, okay? Project out, let's just say another 25 years, so just add 25 pounds to what you weigh. If you are a typical average American, okay, that's what you're going to be. That's where you're going to be, okay? That's where you're going to be. I used to always tell myself, and I will use myself, I used to always tell myself, no, that's not ever going to be me, okay? When I was 20, I weighed, I don't know, between 165 and about 170 or thereabouts. I was fine right up until sort of like late 30s, okay? I was up a little, I was somewhere between 170 and about 180, and then I've hit where we are now, and then the last time I was at the doctor, it was like 202. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a fucking statistic, right? I have become that which I teach my students we do not need to be. I have become the average American. And pandemic and having a nearly 21-month-old at home, to where we get home at 5 and we have to try to alternate who gets to exercise in the evenings, and then all of this other shit that goes into things. And I'm like, yeah, when the pandemic is over, maybe I can actually go back and exercise some more. So, because clearly I can't stop eating pizza and cheese dip and tacos and Doritos, which is another issue, okay? So we say all of that, okay? And you think, that's not that much. You're like, okay, I'm here, and, you know, you're my wife who's had a baby and all of these things. And she's like, I weigh 5 pounds more than I did when I was 20. And I look at her and I'm just like, I hate you, okay? And I love you, but also, you know, how is this possible in these kinds of ways? Good genes that she has, okay? But this is what happens, okay? This is what happens. How do we do this? How do we gain 1 pound a year, okay? Anybody want to share what you had for breakfast this morning? How many of you had breakfast? Anybody on Zoom have breakfast and want to share? Anybody? Chandler, so you guys, Chandler, you had breakfast. What'd you have? Egg whites with fat-free cheese in it, so fake cheese, oatmeal, and peanut butter. Do you mix the peanut butter in the oatmeal? Is it like apple cinnamon oatmeal? That sounds pretty good. No, just like regular, like oatmeal? Do you have any idea how many calories you probably consume? Like how many egg whites? You're like pulling out your phone, you're going to track all of this now. Have this. Okay. 499 calories. Okay. All right. Anybody else have breakfast? You want to share what you had? When? 2 eggs and toast. Okay. Do you have egg whites, or do you have the whole egg? Whole egg. Okay. It's way better than the egg whites. So much effort to like get egg whites separated from the rest of the egg. It's better. Just scramble all that mess up together. That's the way to go. Okay. Do we have a Waffle House here? Is there a Waffle House? Yes. Okay. Speaks to me very, very much. Anybody on Zoom want to share? Everybody's afraid now. Okay. I'll use again. You know what Dr. Black had for breakfast? King-size Snickers. Okay. We ordered food from Walmart last night and went to get it, and they had given it away to some other family. So we got our cold stuff. So luckily we have like 4 gallons of milk and, you know, like some chicken and hamburger meat and those kinds of things. But, you know, my normal things that I would have for breakfast, right, like cereal or granola bars, all gone. I got none of those. I had to stop this morning. Plus, I didn't get my Diet Mountain Dew. So I had to stop this morning at a gas station and got a giant Diet Mountain Dew. And they didn't have a regular size Snicker bar, so I had to get the king size, right? I didn't have a choice. So that's what I had for breakfast. Although I probably had about as many calories as Chandler did from my king size Snickers. And yet we can argue about whose was in a better place. Okay? All right. Chandler, since you're tracking things, I assume you have some reasonable idea of how many calories you're shooting to consume every day. Do you mind sharing that with us?
I track macros.
Okay, she tracks macros. That's a very bro-ish thing to say. I'm just gonna say that now, right? The bros are always very concerned about their macros. I got to get my macros right.
It's like 15 to 1600.
Okay, 15 to 1600. Okay, it's a very reasonable number. Okay, 15 to 1600. Okay, so let us assume, okay, that Chandler's resting metabolic rate, the kind of what she needs in a day, is right around that 15 to 1600. Okay, that may, depending upon what she does, that may be a tad bit of an overestimate, but it's probably not that far off. Okay, not that far off. Do you know how many extra calories she would need to eat every day to put herself in a caloric excess sufficient to gain 1 pound a year?
Every 500 calories a pound.
Roughly, yes. Although there's a new study that argues that 3,500 calories for fat is kind of that was derived in the 1920s, and it's off ever so slightly, but I mean it's not off by more than like 100 calories one way or the other. So about 3,500 calories. Let's say that 3,500 calories. Okay. 9, 10 extra calories a day. 10. You guys know what 10 extra calories is? Maybe a Crystal Light, right? 10 calories. That's like, like half of a Cheez-It or something. Okay? God forbid you want it to be 5 pounds a year. That's 50 calories. It's Halloween, that's like a little fun-size Snicker bar. Or a little fun-size like Tootsie Roll or something. Okay? 50 extra calories a day, every day for a year, and theoretically you're in a place to have gained 5 pounds. If you're at 50 extra calories over your metabolic rate, over your caloric expenditure per day. Okay? Think about that. Now think about how you eat. Okay? Now, in you guys, it matters much less, right? This idea that there is some absolute one-to-one kind of ratio between, okay, well, I had just this much more, and then I have it chronically, and I'm going to end up in a place, okay? Doesn't work quite as sort of nicely in folks that tend to be y'all's age. Y'all can overeat a little bit more so, and it probably isn't all going to go like this. You get to be my age, though, and that shit is crazy, okay? It's crazy. Plus your muscle mass drops because who has time to go do squats anymore, much less like power cleans or anything else. And you're like, oh, well, I used to need 1,600 calories a day. Now I only need like 12. And so what I used to eat now becomes even more of a problem. And we all look up and we've gained 20 pounds or we've gained a pound a year. Okay. So is that surprising to any of you guys? 10 calories a day, extra, 10. Okay. 2 more spoonfuls of Chandler's oatmeal every morning. It's crazy, right? That's crazy. If you're not like me and you don't like to drink diet soda, I only drink diet soda because I need fluid all the time because I'm addicted to caffeine. And if I drank like regular soda, I'd consume 2,000 calories a day probably out of, extra things like that. Like there's about 160 or 70 calories in a 12-ounce can of Coke. Okay? That's 2.5 weeks worth of extra calories in one Coke. Okay? One Coke. I had my regular things and then I had my Snicker bar this morning. Right? It's like 500 calories. That's almost 2 months worth of extra calories on my way to that 1 pound. Okay? I just want you guys, and I do this to illustrate, I just want you guys to appreciate in some ways how easy and how tenuous it is, okay, from a dietary standpoint, especially as we age, especially as total physical activity dips, as that dips, muscle mass tends to dip, so our metabolic rates are going to begin to fall, that there's this very, very kind of tenuous relationship between all of these things, okay? And it's very, very easy then to see how I did bad today, that's not the end of the world. But I did bad today and tomorrow and a couple of days next week, and you look up in a year and you've gained a pound. And you look up in 20 years and you've gained 20 pounds, right? So I just want you guys to appreciate kind of how and why this is such a big problem, right? Such a big problem for us as a society. The world would be better with no McDonald's. The world would be better with no Chick-fil-A, okay? I was hoping somebody had gone to Chick-fil-A for breakfast, right? You get a hash brown, you get a chicken biscuit, right? If you get a milkshake, it's like 2,500 calories right there, okay? For some of y'all, that's 2 days worth of food in one meal, okay? In one meal. It's good though, right? It's good. You had a bad day, that strawberry milkshake really hits the spot, doesn't it? So, okay. Let me turn this thing back on. Now that everybody is depressed, we'll start back up. All right, so remember we left off on Monday talking about how we quantify the makeup of the body, the chemical or the anatomical makeup of the body, okay? So remember, please remember, okay, the only way to truly know without having to do any kind of estimation things what you are made up of is to dissect you and weigh out all of your individual body, okay? So anatomical dissection is the only direct way. All of the things that we began talking about, so the use of densitometry, right, to calculate body density. We know mass and we know volume, we can calculate density. If we know density, then we can estimate based upon the known densities of bone and water and muscle and fat, we can estimate what you're probably made up of, okay? Those are indirect measures. They're indirect. So when we are doing an indirect measure, okay, we have some decisions that we have to make based upon how kind of precise and how kind of fine-tuned do we want to try to estimate what you're made up of. Okay, this will make a little bit more sense as I go through. So in kind of the most basic ways of doing things, okay, which is going to involve, I'll show you guys pictures of like skin fold assessments, the bioelectrical impedance assessment, okay. When we do things that way, we're going to use what we would call a two-component or a two-compartment model, okay. I'm going to pinch you, I'm going to measure your adipose, your subcutaneous adipose tissue at multiple spots, and then we're going to get an estimate from all of that of how much of you do we think is lipid tissue, how much is adipose, and then how much is everything else. So a two-component model separates the body into fat tissue, okay, lipid, and then it considers everything else globally all mixed together. Muscle, protein, water, connective tissue, okay, minerals, all of that stuff is all kind of swirled around and mixed together. That's the most basic thing, okay? For a lot of our more accessible and kind of less expensive indirect measures, that's the best that we can do, okay? We know how much of you is adipose, how much of you is fat, and then what is everything else, okay? You are 22% body fat, okay? So 22% of you is adipose tissue, and then the other 78 is everything else, okay? That's a two-compartment model, right? With one of our more sophisticated, but yet quite a bit more expensive measures of assessing body composition, we can do what is called a three-compartment or a three-component model, okay? In a three-compartment model, and this is going to be done using a special kind of X-ray called a Dexa scan, we're going to separate you into adipose tissue, mineral tissue from your bones, okay? Because that mineral tissue is much, much, much more dense than anything else. And then what is considered lean body mass, which is everything else, which is mostly then going to be muscle, connective tissue, and water, okay? So a three-compartment model, by being able to separate the fat-free mass. So we call kind of the everything else that is not lipid, we call that fat-free mass. By being able to partition the fat-free mass into more different and kind of specific tissues, we can get a much more accurate picture of your body composition, okay? So a three-component model is more accurate than a two-component model. Because there's some error in our density calculations when we consider bone and water and muscle and all of that stuff together. So we can split them out, it's going to be more accurate, okay? probably the most accurate way of assessing your body composition. And this is a way that we very, very seldomly ever do, okay, is what's called a 4-component model. And so again, we have adipose tissue. We then separate you into specifically muscle and bone, and then what we're going to call residual lean mass, okay? Residual lean mass is going to be mostly water and connective tissue, okay? Now, there's a couple of different ways to do 4-component models. One of them is to take an MRI image of your entire body, which means you lay in the magnet for just hours on end, which if you're at all claustrophobic is not the best thing in the world. Or there's a more sophisticated way where we would do several different quantification techniques for each individual thing. Then we have you drink some radioactive water. It's not dangerously radioactive. It's called deuterium. We would have you drink some radioactive water, and then we collect your urine for a couple of weeks. And based upon all of that, we can estimate body water content. We can also get a good estimate of your metabolic rate from it's called deuterium dilution and all of that. Okay. MRI machine, I don't know, it's about $5 million to buy one. We're looking to buy one to put on campus here. So if you've got spare cash, you've got capital around and you want to invest in something, invest in a facility to put an MRI machine in. Yeah, it's like $5 million to have one, but your insurance pays, if you were to go get a scan, it pays out somewhere at about $2,000 an hour, okay? And they're always in use. We always need more imaging solutions. So your return on investment can be very, very high. So if anybody has, loose change, you want to give us some money, let me know. We'll go in and we'll sell the MRI place, okay? That's the 4-component model. Again, by separating fat-free mass into its more individualized components, each of which will have a different density, we can get a more accurate assessment of what's going on, okay? Does that make sense to you? Are you following me on this idea of 2-component, 3-component, and 4-component, okay? I'm going to show you a picture of how we do the 3 and 4-component things. We cannot do those as our part of our lab. What you guys are going to do in the lab is going to be a 2-component model of doing things, okay? We have, over in our other building, we have the ability to do the 3-component, but you have to be in a research study. I can't just give you a Dexa scan because you get a tiny amount of radiation doing groups of our safety work people out of maybe you get more radiation walking across campus because the sun's out from the next section. Okay. All right. So the more accurate measures are going to be these. These are going to be 3 and 4-component ones. What you can see here is an MRI, which would be 4-component. This is what we call a Dexa scan. This is a 3-component. These are going to be imaging-based techniques, okay? An MRI, you guys probably, we did a bunch of MRIs when I was a PhD student. Y'all probably don't want me to explain to you the inner workings of physics that allow magnets to line up the electrons and all of the tissues in your body to then make an image. Do you? I assume you guys don't learn about spin physics and all of that? No? Okay, good. Not really prepared for that. But you can take an MRI and you would take individual kind of cross-sectional images from your hands all the way down to your feet. And when you see the image, some poor person has to go in and like circle on the image each individual kind of slice of tissue and say, this looks like fat. This looks like a piece of your brain. This looks like water. This is part of a bone. And you add up kind of the area of each of those things. They all have their known density, you know, their area. You add them up across your entire body. Takes some poor grad student 6 weeks to do the whole thing, and we can get a really, really hyper accurate way. Okay. Of all of the things that we can do outside of a dissection, having a full body MRI is probably the most accurate way to quantify your body composition. It is also unquestionably the least feasible thing we could ever undertake in our lives. It is not worth the time or the effort to do that, but it would be the most accurate. That's a 4-component model because it can quantify adipose tissue, purely muscle, okay, kind of leftover water and lean tissue, connective tissue, etc. Plus bone. A Dexa scan, a Dexa is a fancy X-ray, okay? Has anybody had a Dexa scan? Okay, any of you had a Dexa scan? Were you recently in one of our research studies to get one, or freshman? Okay, so do you remember how long it took you to get the scan? It's about right. You lay down on a table and we run this bar over you that shoots these x-rays at you, and it takes a full body x-ray. It takes about 5 minutes. Then there's some fancy computerized software that produces these images that look like this, and we see your skeleton, right? We can see this kind of ghosting around the skeleton. It's going to show us adipose tissue. The skeleton, the places the bones look brighter, there's more mineral in there, so you can see, like in this person, how it's really bright in their skull, okay? And then around their hips and in their femurs and in their tibia, brighter, more bone mineral density there. So the usefulness of DEXA is that we get a fairly accurate estimate of muscle and fat and body composition, but we also can learn things about your bone mineral density, okay? We can learn about how strong are your bones. And as we will see later on, ladies, especially for you all, having a Dexa scan now gives us some level of baseline to compare against as you guys age and you near menopause and your estrogen drops and then your bones are going to wither away and turn into dust. Okay, so you guys have a little bit of time left to try to get your bone mineral density up. So go do some gymnastics today, go do some squats, run around, jump, land. I'm not joking. I'm not joking, okay? Because once you all hit about 30, all you're doing for the rest of your life is just trying to hang on to the bone mineral density. Much in the way like the guys, have I told you all, you've peaked already, right? Your testosterone is a little bit lower than it used to be. If you're my age, you're like, what testosterone? In the midst of things, okay? We're trying to hang on to our muscle mass. Ladies, y'all are trying to hang on to your bone mineral density. And in some ways, it's, you know, same thing. Resistance training can be really helpful for both. Okay? All right. So that's what this tells us. Of the practical, reasonably feasible, not outrageously expensive things to do, DEXA is kind of more accurate because it's 3 component than, say, skin folds or underwater weighing or biological impedance. Okay? So when we want to know somebody's body composition in our research, we just do a DEXA. Other indirect measures. One that we would normally do in lab, which is probably the most awkward thing that we do for the entire semester, and outside of doing an EKG, where you have to stick electrodes right around somebody's chest here, this is the most awkward thing you would do as one of our measures. You have to pinch each other using these skin fold calipers at select locations, okay? And so when we take skin folds, you grab, you pull the skin away, okay, away from the muscle tissue, hold it, and then we put the calipers on and we measure it. And if we measure strategically, what we are measuring with skin folds is the thickness of what we call subcutaneous adipose tissue. So fat that is stored directly below the skin. We know that people that have more subcutaneous adipose tissue have a higher total body adipose tissue percentage. And so by measuring in certain very strategic locations where people tend to store fat, okay, we can use all of that to try to estimate their total body fat and muscle tissue. Okay? Surprisingly, this is not that easy to do. You need to practice and be pretty well trained. We do it in lab. I tell everybody, you guys are going to get a number, and it's going to be off by like 10%. You're either going to pinch too much, or you're going to pinch too little. Mostly it's too little. People don't want to pinch their partner and do things. We have these very, very small numbers on those. That's skin folds. Okay. Bioelectrical impedance uses an electrical current that we run through your body. And it takes advantage of the fact that water which is what muscles are mostly made up of, and the rest of your body, mostly water, okay? Water transmits electricity really well. Fat, on the other hand, is an insulator. Fat does not transmit electrical currents very well. And so, by running a current into your body in one place and measuring the amount of time it takes for it to arrive at some other place in your body, we can, through some fancy calculations, try to estimate how much of you is muscle and water, how much of you is fat. Okay? So in the lab, what we will use on Monday is a handheld device. When you hold it, you put your arms out in front of you, you enter in some information on your sex, on your age, your height and your weight, and then it runs the current from one arm, and it comes up one arm, and it goes down the other. You don't feel the current, I promise you, don't feel it. Okay? And it makes an estimation. Other ways that this is done is what's on the screen here, where you see the person standing on what looks like a scale. We have one of those here, okay? And so I would take my shoes off, and I would stand on the BIA machine. Don't ask me why it's called BIA. It's biological impedance. I don't really understand. But you would stand, you would hold these things in your arm, you would stand like so, and it's going to run the current sort of up one leg or into one arm and then down on the other. This one would tend to be a little bit more accurate than the handheld ones. If I can't find the handheld ones, then I will have to have somebody show me how to use this by Monday, since I've never actually used this particular one before. We have one of these over in the hub. Anybody got another one over at the hub? Right? So you can use it. Of all of the things that we do to quantify body composition, bioelectrical impedance, this is the least accurate. Okay? This is the least accurate, because if you drink a big glass of water before you come to class on Monday, it's going to say that you have less body fat than you may really do. If you're a little dehydrated because, I don't know, you partied too much over the weekend, right? Not that out of the realm for some people, maybe. And you're a little dehydrated, it's going to say you have a higher body fat percentage. You could get on this thing, and we could take Eric's giant kind of thermos there, have him drink all of that during class, this giant Yeti thing, and he will hydrate himself over the course of our 2-hour class period, and he will appear like he is losing body fat simply by adding water, because the water helps to transmit the electricity. Okay? That's how we would do this. So we're going to do that one on Monday, and you guys can get some rough estimate of what all is going on. Okay? BIA and skin fold are 2-component models. They're less accurate than Dexa and MRI, and even from underwater weighing, which we'll see in a minute. They're less accurate because they're only 2 components. It's only fat tissue and everything else. So another way that's a little bit more accurate, but has some other potential sources of error. And if you guys take exercise physiology lab as a course, you get to do this. I think you have to. I'm not sure that you can. Maybe you can opt out. And it's called underwater weighing. Okay. This takes advantage of the idea that fat and muscle have different densities. Fat wants to float in water. Muscle wants to sink in water. And so what we do basically is we submerge you all the way underwater. We're not checking to see if you're a witch or a warlock or anything else, right? All we're doing is people that are more lean and have less fat tissue are going to be less buoyant. And so if you put them on a scale underwater, they're going to weigh more, okay, than a person that is a little more like Dr. Black now, a little fluffier here, okay? He's going to have, this guy has more body fat, therefore there's going to be additional buoyancy, so he's going to weigh less underwater. And so based upon we know what you weigh out of the water, we know what you weigh in the water, we can kind of estimate from all of that body density and use that as a way of trying to estimate your body composition. Okay? To do this, we have what looks like it's just a giant hole in the ground, okay? We joke around over there that it's like the Silence of the Lambs pit or something that's in Dr. Larson's lab, but it's just like the floor looks like this. There's just a big hole, and it's like 10 feet deep. fill it up with water, and then we have a scale that you can sit on. You have to go down, but you have to dunk yourself all the way under the water. You stay under for about 20 seconds. So it's a little awkward to do all of those things. You have to blow all the air out of your lungs before you go under, because if you have that trapped air, that increases buoyancy and things. So this used to be much more widely used than it is today. And now that Dexa machines are much more readily available when you want to assess body composition, this used to be one of the ways. Another way that is more accurate than DIA or spinfold that we have available to us, that you guys could use when you want to do a capstone project, is something called air displacement plethysmography. This takes place inside a machine that we call the bod pod. Okay, here's the picture of the bod pod. Right, looks like sort of like an escape pod from a science fiction movie or something. But the idea behind all of this is that we're going to blow air on you and use the change in air pressure from one side of your body to the next to calculate the volume of your body. So if we know how much you weigh, there is a thing in physics called Boyle's law. And it tells us that pressure from one side of an object to the other is inversely related to the volume that's going to be there. And so if we put you in, okay, if we put you in a thing, we know the volume of the overall, okay, of the overall inside of the bod pod, and we blow air on you or across you at a known pressure. We measure that pressure on the other side, then we know one volume, we know both of our pressures, so we can solve for your actual body weight. Okay? So that's how we're going to get that. If we know your weight, we know your volume, we can calculate your density. If we know your density, we can estimate how much muscle and fat it should have. Okay? This is a weird one. Has anybody ever been in a bod pod before? Okay, my ladies in the back. Do y'all want to describe your experience in the bod pod? Just sit there. Okay. I mean, the air blows reasonably hard, but I mean, it's not like crazy or anything. Did they make you guys put a shower cap on? Okay. Did you wear a wetsuit? No. Okay. Did they tell you guys that you needed to like shave all of the excess hair off of your body otherwise or anything? You make sure that your legs were shaved and everything else? Anything there? No? Okay. Well, the most accurate way to do the bod pod thing, hair catches air. Clothing catches air. Okay? And so typically what we will tell people when you're going to get in the bod pod is you've got to pull your hair up and like put a shower cap on or a swim cap on if you have very much hair whatsoever. And then you want tight fitting clothing and as little of it as possible. And if otherwise you would want to get the best measurement, shave all of the extra hair off of your body as possible. Okay? You're like a swimmer right before they're going to go into the Olympics. You shave all your arm hair, just everything else is gone. Okay? That gives us the most accurate because the hair catches the air and it creates these little small changes in air pressure. And that's going to make it less accurate. Okay? So for the most part, when we do this, we just have people like come and tell them to like wear like some compression shorts, right? And guys will generally either be in like a very kind of tight fitting workout short, or like ladies, you all would just like wear like a jog bra or something and then put on a shower cap. You just kind of chalk those. Okay? So we have one of these over in our labs. We never use it anymore because we have the Dexa machines. But we will occasionally get capstone groups that will want to use it. Okay? So Chandler and Sarah, y'all use them because this is how athletics used to do things. They have a Dexa machine now, but they have issues getting that. The physician has to write a prescription to get the Dexa used, which makes no sense in a lot of ways. They may still do some of this to track. Okay, we talked about Dexa already. We talked about this. We talked about MRI. Skin folds. Okay. What I do want to mention, because it's going to appear on the lab, but we're not going to do it, is when we measure skin folds, okay, there are very precise locations where we must make the assessments because all of the estimation equations are going to derive from people measuring in these particular areas, okay? And so generally, skin folds are going to be measured in 7 sites, and it's the same 7 sites for men and for women, okay? There. I'm not going to ask you guys. Okay? What I will give you guys, I will give you all on the lab, I will give you some skin fold measures and make you guys plug them in and do the calculations and the equations as though you measure them. Okay? But you don't have to know like exactly precisely where is the fold supposed to be, is it vertical, is it horizontal, is it diagonal, what are your landmarks and those kind of things. You don't have to know that. Okay? So you guys will note here these 7 sites are identical for men and for women. I will walk you guys through where these are just because I'm a glutton for punishment. Okay? So we're going to make a measurement at the chest, triceps, on the abdominals, okay, subscapular, so below your scapula, suprailiac, so right over your iliac crest, mid-axillary, which is kind of in the middle over your ribs here, and then on your thigh, okay? The more sites that we measure, the better, the more clear picture we have of where individuals are depositing body fat. Everybody deposits it in a little bit of a different place, okay? There is a 3-site way of doing it where we measure different places in men versus women. And so when you guys see the lab, you will see here are your 7-site measures. Now calculate body comp from the 7 sites and then turn around and calculate it from the 3 specific sites. 3 sites are less accurate, okay? Because everybody deposits fat in a little bit of a different way. And so by doing that, then what if you just happen to store your fat in a different place than where we're measuring our 3 sites? Okay? And so you may be slightly atypical for your sex, and so that may be a little bit off. Okay, so the chest site is sort of right about here. I know this is a great visual for my people on Zoom that you can't see me or anything else, but the chest site, okay, is right along from the crook of your armpit, kind of diagonally at a 45-degree angle down towards your nipple. Okay, so it's going to be right about there. Okay, that's the chest site. Triceps is on the back of your tricep. Everybody do this for me. Even my people on Zoom. Take your left arm, put your left arm out. Relax, relax the arm, shake it around a little bit. Take your right hand, and between your thumb and middle finger, I want you to pinch over your tricep, okay? Pinch and slowly pull down, and you should be able to feel your tricep kind of roll up and be able to then pull the skin and the subcutaneous fat away from there. You guys feel your ability to do that? That is what we are doing when we're measuring a skin fold, okay? And so you can feel the muscle move. Grab your flabby tricep or mine. I can make it wave at you if I want, okay? We measure our distances there. So it's kind of the midpoint between your acromion process and your elbow, kind of on the back. That's tricep. Abdominal is 2 inches to the right of your belly button. Okay, 2 inches to the right of your belly button. That one is not a particularly fun one to grab on a lot of people. That one actually hurts a little bit. Subscapular is going to be, you guys want to see something fun, what playing lots of baseball does to you? See where I can put my hand with this? Now watch my throwing hand. That's all I got. Okay, but what we're doing is subscapular is here. You would put your arm behind your back like so. Pull your hand up, and we're going to measure on the inferior angle right here that below your scapula. Okay, that is subscapular. Suprailiac is right over what you might think of as kind of prototypically a love handle is going to be. So you find your iliac crest. I don't know why I always look up when I'm doing this. I'm like, everybody shut up, nobody talk. I'm trying to find. So it's right about here. Okay, you do a kind of diagonal down. You're gonna pinch there. That's gonna be suprailiac. Okay, mid-axillary is right over your ribs, so right here. Okay, at the level of your sternum, kind of at the level of the xiphoid process, over, right over your ribs. So if you pinch there, and then thigh is right in the middle over your rectus femoris. Okay, right in the middle, the midpoint between the head of your femur and your patella. So kind of right about where my keys are sitting in my pocket right there. Okay. So you can see that we're getting a little bit of an estimate in your legs, a couple on your trunk, a couple in the kind of abdominal region, one in the arm. That's going to give us our generalized estimate. Okay. You guys will note that we do different 3 sites for the men and the women. The thigh is the same, but women are triceps and suprailiac, and men are chest and abdominal. That is typically because women and men tend to store fat in slightly different areas in general. Okay, men tend to be a little bit more kind of rear belly, stomach dominant. Okay, and kind of upper shoulder, chest area. Women tend to be a little more, we call this typically android and gynoid type obesity. Women very often are going to be a little more kind of lower body, right? Hips, thighs, butt area tends to be where women will store a little bit more fat. Men, okay? Everybody's different, but those are the points of the site. BIA, all right. So, okay, let's take a break. We'll come back at 12:05 and we'll start talking about a little bit about obesity, okay? And we'll go ahead and get everybody out of here. Okay. Okay. Let's continue with our depressingness as Americans and why my want to eat Chick-fil-A is killing me and everyone else like me. Okay? So we've talked about body composition, right? I want you guys to remember also from last week that when we talk about obesity, we're not really purely talking about body composition. That's not what we have a lot of good data on. We don't have data from thousands and thousands and thousands of people from like a Dexa Scan or something where we measured their actual body composition and then we tracked their risk of cardiovascular disease or diabetes or something. These where we have lots of data is from using the body mass index. Okay, so just using pure, simple height and weight. So just take all of this with a little bit of a grain of salt and just remember that especially in people that have lots of muscle mass, BMI is not necessarily that strongly associated with pure muscle and fat. Okay? All right. Here's data through about 2000. I should probably go on the CDC and get some even more depressing things. But what we know as of last year is that somewhere between 70 and 75% of American adults are overweight by the body mass index. That means you have a BMI of 25 or greater, okay? So somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of all adult Americans are overweight, okay? Now you may say, Dr. Black, that's fine, whatever, why do we care, right? I just got to buy some bigger pants. It's not that big of a deal, right? Not that big of a deal. And in some ways, you're not wrong. But I want you to appreciate that being overweight, as you guys will see, increases your risk of all chronic diseases, just about, okay? Not a huge amount, but some. Also, being overweight is the gateway to being obese, okay? It's the gateway to being obese. Start off kind of in this. So somewhere between 70 to 75% of all adults are overweight by BMI. So this says about a third. The newest data, it's about 40% or so. So somewhere between about a third and 40% of the adult U.S. population has a BMI of 30 or greater and is therefore considered to be obese. Okay? If you are obese by BMI, you have a marked increase in the risk of especially cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Okay? Cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. Also, if you are a woman who has a BMI over 30, you're going to have an increased risk of sort of sex hormone associated cancers. Okay? Breast cancer, uterine cancer, endometrial cancer. Okay? So, and actually that's probably pre-menopause too. So with cancers, breast cancer and things are kind of interesting or strange or different based on pre and post-menopause. But the take home is that somewhere around 35 or 40% of adults are there. Look at these data. In the 1960s, okay, we were somewhere in the low teens on all of this. So over the course of about 60 years, we sort of doubled to almost tripled the amount of people in our country that have become obese. Okay? So the real question that I have for you guys is, why is this the case? Why do you think this has happened? You know, any ideas? Why do you think we've gone up so much in obesity? Increase in fried food and fast food, okay? I will tell you, though, that there was fast food and fried food around in the 60s. Maybe not quite as many options, but McDonald's still existed, I think, right? My grandmother, both of my grandmothers would tell you that they fried food all the time. You guys heard of lard? You guys know what lard is? Lard makes everything better, right? So my dad's mother she's a good Southern Arkansas lady. Everything was made with lard. You bake with lard, you fry with lard, everything. But okay, that's a possibility for sure. Think of anything else? Less walking, less activity. Okay, good. Eric, you had your hand raised. Okay. 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 That's like three things all together, that's absolutely, you guys are both correct. That's kind of that encompasses just about everything. Okay. Fast food tends to be cheap, reasonably cheap for its caloric density. Fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, those things, right? Anybody go shopping? There's not any Whole Foods here, is there? There's not a Whole Foods in Norman. We have one in Oklahoma City, because my wife insists that we must buy Ellis, like organic fruit and vegetables and things. So I have to go to Whole Foods and pay like $5 for a little tiny thing of raspberries, and Ellis will eat the entirety of them like a day from that standpoint. Okay, but it's expensive. If you guys have ever been to Whole Foods, it's expensive, right? The same stuff you can get at Walmart. Now I admit it's way better. We get strawberries at Whole Foods. They taste like real strawberries. I get strawberries at Walmart. I'm like, these aren't quite as good, but they're expensive. Okay, and so that becomes an issue. Fruits and vegetables, things that are less calorically dense, are quote unquote better for you, right? Less preservatives, that kind of thing. They're more expensive. Okay, we are more sedentary, and there's more fast food. All of those things together. What do we do for jobs now? How many of you have a parent that has a job where they sit on their butt all day? Okay, like 3/4 of you guys. How many of you have a parent that, as part of their job, they're actually on their feet, physically moving around and like lifting and moving and doing physical things all the time? Okay, lesson. Okay, that has shifted. The things that we do, technology and all of this has shifted the way that we work, the way that society is organized, and those kinds of things.
right? Anybody a bike rider? But want to like ride your bike around rather than like have a car or anything? No? That's good because you can't do it here in Norman. You're going to get run down by somebody. There's not protected bike lanes. And I can tell you that in the countries in the world with the lowest kind of obesity rates and those things, they have markedly higher physical activity rates than what we do. Their diet selection on things is a little bit different. But like you go to Scandinavia, you go to Northern Europe, and they have like people bike all over the place. But there's protected biking. You might ever been to Boulder, Colorado? Okay. Taylor, did you see they basically have like protected bike like highway to get everywhere in the city in Boulder? You're from. See, Colorado is good in that way. And if I show you guys on the places where people are the most active, like Colorado is consistently one of like the top 2 or 3 in the most active places. But it's protected. It's easy to get around. Okay? So all of that has kind of contributed to all of this. You will notice kind of big spikes here in another alarming trend, which is probably not that surprising to you guys, is that the prevalence of overweight and obesity has also gone up significantly in children and teenagers. Okay, it's also gone up in children and teenagers. This is, again, not something back in the 60s and 70s that was very common, and it has become much, much, much more common now. Okay? Much more common now. And there's complex reasons behind all of this, but again, it's related to diet, it's related to physical activity. Okay, here is the states with the highest prevalence, so the most common self-reported obesity among U.S. adults. These are CDC data from 2018. The darker the red, the higher the percentage. So I want you guys to note, this is very common. Thank you, Taylor, for pointing this out. Look, Colorado, Hawaii, and Washington, D.C. are the lowest rates of obesity. Okay? Here we're going to have kind of the highest rates, especially in sort of the southeast and up through Appalachia, in Kentucky and West Virginia. Okay? I don't really know what else is going on in North Dakota either. But we've got all of this area that's going to be down. It's going to be down like this as well. Out in the west, people are a little bit more active. In the northeast, people are more active. In general, people tend to be more active in more urban areas rather than kind of not like purely rural farming areas where that's what people do for work, but in kind of more rural areas where people have to drive around more and do those kinds of things. So that's part of the reason that up here in the Northeast is there's kind of more urban density. People walk to and from work, and the society is set up to be better in those kinds of things. All right, here is self-reported obesity among non-Hispanic white adults. So I'm going to show you guys some data now on the breakdown, the ethnic breakdowns of obesity, because it does matter, okay? It does matter. It's a little bit different based on your ethnicity, and I think that's particularly important for some things as it relates to Oklahoma, okay? So here's the overall one. Here now, if we look in non-Hispanic white adults, so people that basically self-identify as Caucasian. Okay? And it should also say non-Hispanic, probably also kind of non-Asian Pacific Islander of descent. This is basically sort of white European descent folks. Okay? It's not that different from the overall, but again, kind of more obesity here. And this, if you will look, right, California is under, there's a little less red, a little more yellow, a little more green than what we had in the country as a whole, okay? If we look now, here are people that are non-Hispanic Black adults, so typically kind of folks of African-American or African or even some non-Hispanic, so kind of not Caribbean typical descent that's going to be here. So look at this, okay? As a group, African Americans tend to be more obese, more prevalent in that ethnic group than it is in Caucasian Americans, okay? Really than any other group. African Americans tend to be the ones here. This is really important now, okay? I'm going to show you guys the Hispanic one too. Guess who COVID disproportionately affects? and it's disproportionately going to be deadly in African Americans, right? Hispanic Americans. So there's going to be issues in these populations, and part of it is obesity, okay? Here are Hispanic adults, Hispanic American adults. Again, almost no green, very little green in Vermont and New Hampshire, mostly because there are very, very few Hispanics that live in Northeast in those areas. But again, maybe not quite as much kind of dark red as African Americans, but more red than our. Okay. So there is this interaction, and I didn't show you those things, but there also, if you look at people that are going to be Native American as well, they look a lot like the Hispanic. It tends to be more prevalence of obesity in those Native populations. Okay? So ethnic minorities are going to be at a higher risk of obesity. And we know that obesity is related to worse health outcomes. Okay? Related to worse health outcomes. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, you name it. Especially now with COVID. There's this interaction. Why are some groups and some people going to be more obese than others? It's this very, very complex interaction between a genetic predisposition. There's a host that we know of physiological things like hormonal imbalances. There's psychological things related to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, mental health kind of things. Emotional trauma is a big deal. And then the emotional trauma and some of these psychological things are going to interact with different genes from different ethnic populations. But then there's also going to be cultural and familial factors that are going to be in there in all of this. Okay? In some cultures, what is considered attractive is going to be different from others. Okay? So there are going to be these kind of societal norms for gender and attractiveness. There's going to be other kind of cultural norms on kind of what do you eat, how much do you eat, how active are you, do you exercise, do you not exercise? You guys will talk about some of these things when you get into lifestyle intervention. Okay? There are things that we know that it is sometimes more difficult for us to be able to do interventions in some of these ethnic minority populations because they have different cultural norms of what they want, what is considered acceptable. We also know that diet composition and physical inactivity are going to be. So there's this genetic component that is overlaid with some level of behavioral and environmental factors. The other piece that we've not overlaid on all of this, it's really hard for us to go into too much depth in this class on, is education and socioeconomic status. Okay? If we were to overlay, education overlays with socioeconomic status really, really well. Okay? In a very general sense, ethnic minorities tend to be more prevalent, having a lower socioeconomic status and lower education level than Caucasians. Okay? If you look, though, regardless of ethnicity, lower education, lower socioeconomic status tends to be associated with higher rates of obesity, higher rates of poor health. Right? So there's some things that are going to interact in the midst of all of that. We have to think about those things if we move to intervention. Okay. What are the health risks of being overweight and obese? Disease risk on pretty much, you name a chronic disease, and your disease risk goes up being overweight and up significantly with being obese. We have higher mortality rates from these diseases and just in general in people that are overweight and obese than people that are quote unquote normal weight. And then we also see a decrease in well-being. So overweight and obesity also tends to be related to kind of worse mental health outcomes. So very general. Being overweight, being obese is bad for your health. It's bad for your well-being. Okay. Major health problems. This just kind of shows a whole host of these different kinds of things. So here is maybe one of the most significant graphs that I will show you guys for the entirety of the course. And this is body mass index graph down here on the x-axis and the ratio of mortality rates or excess mortality rates on the y-axis. So what you guys can see here is I'm in my normal BMI kind of range from about 18 to 25 here. This is my reference group. We're right at around 1 or a ratio of 1. As I move into this 25 to 30, I'm going to begin to see some increase in overall mortality risk. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit, okay? Once I clear 30, then it's going to begin to increase in an even steeper rate. And then once I get over like a 35 and 40, I become very much sort of morbidly obese. My rates of mortality. So, obesity and overweightness is associated with excess mortality, likely due to increasing body. Okay. Well, let's talk very, very briefly about body weight regulation. Okay. I want to present a caveat on all of this. I'm going to give you guys an oversimplification. We already did a little bit at the start of class today. This is an oversimplification of how body weight is regulated. Okay. It is not this simple, but these principles generally are going to hold. Okay. There's not some magic diet. There's not some magic ability to manipulate what it is that you're kind of eating and yet still eat way too much and be able to kind of not. Okay? But in a very general sense, your body weight, and therefore your body composition, is controlled by the balance of your energy intake from food and your energy expenditure from resting metabolic rate, from digestion, and from physical activity and exercise. Okay? When you consume more calories than you need, if you do that for some reasonably prolonged period of time, you will gain weight. Okay? If you are under what you need, you will lose weight. Okay? That's the kind of general principle. Calories in versus calories out. Energy in versus energy out. Okay? So you can look at these things like I'm eating some carbs, I'm eating some protein, I'm eating some fat. Is the ratio of these things to each other going to play potentially some role in kind of what output is going to be? The answer is probably. Okay? Probably. But it's complex. Okay? So just think of it as a scale. When I eat more than I need, eventually I'm going to gain weight. When I eat less than I need, eventually I'm going to lose weight. Okay? So this is a fun thing Dr. Tinku likes to put in here. We can calculate sort of the number of calories that are going to be kind of contained. Dr. Tinku, I don't know why he picked the Heineken in those ways, but let's assume, I know none of you would do this, but assume somebody had a beer. This beer has 11 grams of carbs and 2 grams of protein, 17.5 grams of alcohol. If we know the number of kcals per grams of these things, we can calculate the number of calories in this single bottle of beer, okay? And it works out to be somewhere around, it's like 180 to 200 calories in this one bottle of beer. That means you got to walk 2 miles to burn off the calories from one beer. Okay? So think about it that way. I got to walk 4 miles or 4.5 miles to burn off the calories that I had from my breakfast this morning, assuming that that is going to be in some way in excess. So covering the distance of about a mile burns about 100 calories. It doesn't matter if you run, it doesn't matter if you walk. It's about 100. Okay? Give or take. So just think about how much distance you cover in a given day, and you can get some action. Okay. All right. So that's the general things about body weight regulation. Questions about that? But there's always lots of questions about low carb, high fat. What about this? What if I only eat protein? Does that matter? Dr. Oz says that if I eat dragon fruit topped with cayenne pepper, it'll make my metabolic rate go up by 1,000 calories a day, and I can eat whatever I want. Now, magically lose a bunch of fat over the weekend or something. Anybody have questions about any of those things? No? Well, then who's ready for lunch? let's go eat. Okay. All right, so the plan is Monday we will have lab. Okay, so come prepared for lab. That just simply means show up. So I just show up. Okay. If we were going to do the body comp stuff with skin folds, I would say like, hey, wear a tank top and wear a pair of shorts, or at least bring a pair of shorts that you can change into, or those kinds of things. So just show up. Okay. Now, Zoom people, if you can't or you don't want to come on Monday, please, you must make arrangements with me to come and do some of these things. All right. That is it. Have a good weekend, everybody. We will see you later on.